first things first, as ever, Frankie, how are you?
Yeah, doing all right. A bit disappointed though, George. The Wolves loss is it hit me hard. It hit me
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, I think I'm all right about it. But
Did the
yeah,
coronation cheer you up?
did the, I didn't watch much of it, to be honest. Might have missed quite a bit of it. Yeah, it was fine, I guess. It was it was what it was.
Yeah.
I did the helicopters and the planes that flew over the Mall when Prince Charles or King Charles now I guess was on the balcony.
Mm.
They flew over my flat,
Oh, yeah.
and I was standing on my balcony at the time, so I was kind of thinking like, finally, all Villa no filler is getting the acknowledgement we deserve. The British state has organised for a flyover to celebrate this podcast.
Yeah, we've got over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so
Yeah,
they've, they've
exactly.
they've called for the helicopter parade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. Prince William Villa fans saw the 1,000 subscribers for all Villa. He's like straight on the phone. Got to sort this. You've got to get a chin up flying over that house.
Just
Get
just
the red arrows.
just wait and see what's coming when we get over 2,000, Frankie.
Yeah.
It's gonna be incredible.
Oh, it's gonna be. Wow. We'll be moving into Buckingham Palace. They'll be letting keys to the place.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Do do
lovely.
the podcast from from one of the royal chambers.
Yeah,
It's where we belong, I think.
yeah.
Really.
In the dungeon. That's where we belong. Locked up.
Straight in the Tower of London,
Yeah,
off with our heads.
yeah.
Anyway, Frankie, what did you make of the match? I think Wolves did sort of control things. But how did you see it?
Uh, yeah. It was kind of like the perfect start for Wolves, really, and it then set the tone for the rest of the game. Annoyingly, because it was like Wolves pressed us really hard in the first 15 minutes. So like whenever we were passing around at the back, it felt like Wolves attackers were very honest. So they exerted a lot of energy to do that in the first 15 minutes of the first half. And then at that time, they won a corner and then just annoyingly scored a goal from a set piece. It was a great header from Totti. But, you know, I sort of need to see the goal again just because when I was watching it, from where I could see it, it was McGinn and Dawson were at it,
Mm.
and that sort of was quite distracting. But watching it, you kind of felt a bit like Ramsey lost Totti. Maybe Mings was involved in that as well. It just
Yeah.
felt a little bit. It was a rare display of poor defending from a set piece, I would say. But that being said, it was a fantastic header. But then annoyingly, because they get that early lead from a set piece, it then means that Wolves, who are quite a defensive unit, to be honest, they haven't conceded at Molineux in 4 games now, I think.
Mm.
Um, it meant they could just sit back with, at times, 6 at the back.
Yeah.
And then in the centre, it was so compact with Ruben Neves sort of as the main force there, I guess, that it felt like whatever you tried to do, whether you sort of got out wide and crossed it in the area, it was tough because basically their defenders are so tall, they'll head it away. And then when you're trying to get some intricacy going in the centre, it's difficult to get through that defensive wall that they had.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it was difficult to break through them. So you have to credit Wolves for being hard to get through. I think in the first half, they then sat off us too much and gave us way too much of the ball. And we were unlucky not to score. Buendia had a really good effort that was saved by Sarr. I think Buendia was a handful in the first half, made some good runs into the box. Second half, he wasn't as influential. And I think that every player was kind of a bit below par, really. Douglas Luiz, for instance, I think we needed him to really be at it today.
Mm.
As an intricate, passer of the ball, just pass and move quick, and it just wasn't quite there. Alex Moreno wasn't quite at it today. I think Mateus Nunes, I think the Wolves player, I thought he was good actually. But yeah, so that being said, as frustrating as it was, we did still have some chances, and Mings really should have scored with a
Yeah.
volley. But you're kind of saying, well, it's a defender coming in. You kind of hope that's Watkins or Buendia.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think it's a frustrating loss. It looked a little bit like Villa kind of ran out of ideas a bit in the second half, maybe even fatigued. And at times, Wolves were very good at disrupting the play. Lots of fouls, lots of gamesmanship, kicking the ball away, picking the ball up, substitutions at the right time, just lots of things that were kind of disrupting our flow that I think second half we just weren't able to get going. So yeah, it's a frustrating loss. Not a terrible display, I would say, contrary to what I've seen online in some quarters, but just a frustrating loss that I think Wolves defended well and Villa just maybe ran out of steam a bit, to be honest. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I do. There wasn't much in it between the two sides. I didn't think there would be before the match. I thought it would be a difficult game. As you say, Wolves at home are very strong, and we needed to have a bit more about us than what we put out at Molineux, unfortunately. I just think, what you mentioned, Buendia, I think he was trying things. I don't criticize his endeavor, but I think the application just wasn't what it needed to be. It basically needed just a bit of brilliance, a bit of magic to try and unpick that defense. And he was just sort of huffing and puffing and not really able to kind of create that. Ditto Leon Bailey when he came on. Um, did bits and pieces, flashes of skill and trickery, but not great. And again, balls coming in the box and set pieces, we weren't really on it in that regard either. And anything we did put into the box was just sort of thumped away by the likes of Craig Dawson, who had a brilliant game, and he's been a great signing for them since joining from West Ham. I think it's almost like we got Unai Emery'd by Wolves, really. I think
yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
We have won a lot of games like Wolves beat us today. I think of the game against Brentford, for example. Felt a lot like that. And you mentioned Wolves going to 6 at the back at times. I mean, we've done that as well at times in games to secure the 3 points. And Lopetegui's a very experienced, very successful manager. He's worked wonders for Wolves, managed to pull them safely away from the relegation zone.
He's won a Europa League as well.
Yeah.
And a fellow Basque manager as well.
Absolutely.
Like Unai Emery. Yeah.
Lots in common there. And clearly, I think they sort of share the same playbook in terms of tactics, by the looks of things.
Yeah, it wasn't dissimilar, was it?
So yeah. So as I said, I did think it was going to be a tight game, and as you say, there were a lot of players that were just not quite at it, and whether that was fatigue or whether it's the pressure of knowing that a European place is up for grabs, just sort of got in their head, or maybe it was that last week's defeat following kind of the incredible run that we've been on. I don't know. It's kind of tough to put off my finger on it. It's a shame because I know it's not the derby, as in Villa Blues, but it is a West Midlands derby. It's a game which in recent seasons has had a bit of spice to it. I think about the time Wolves came back from behind in really dramatic circumstances at Villa Park to beat us in the last minute. I think Dendoncker scored against us to win that game for them.
He did score. I remember the 1-0 loss.
Yeah, and then I think in the COVID season, El Ghazi scoring a last-minute penalty. So there's always been that sort of element of intrigue to those games. But yeah, we just didn't sort of rise to the occasion, I guess. So that does make it a bit frustrating. But regardless, Europe is still up for grabs. I think the fact next week's game against Spurs obviously is a huge game and obviously must win. That we have to win that game at Villa Park. So it is good that the 3 teams we've got next are the 3 teams who are a direct competition, and ultimately, if we beat them, we will be in Europe. So we've got to bear that in mind. But it is disappointing, and I just hope the fact that we had Kamara return off the subs bench, we had Bailey back on the pitch, Cash is almost there, Coutinho's on the bench, all the players we've missed for weeks and weeks and weeks now, they should be in contention now for that game against Spurs at home, which is a huge boost, and it might be enough to kind of reinvigorate us for that final push in the last 3 games of the season.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the squad there. That is quite important. You know, these players have exerted a lot of energy, both mentally and physically, in the unbeaten run. And they've done it's an incredible achievement, that run, and also to get us into contention for Europe. You know, you just couldn't have dreamt of that when Unai Emery came in and replaced Gerrard, given where we were.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to be hard on these players really with what they've done. I think, you know, when I look at Villa's squad, I do think, you know, I look at Buendia, and I thought actually first half he was effective, but second half he kind of faded off a bit. And I do wonder if, like, you look at all the front players, really, they've had to play every game, you know, and a lot of minutes, and whether there's just like a lack of quality to come in and replace them or to compete with them. You know, I think with a bigger squad and maybe some further quality further forward, that which might come in during the summer, that Villa might, you know, I don't know, just to being able to mix it up a bit. You know, Buendia doesn't have to start every game, you know, or he can start outright rather than always off Watkins or wherever. And then I think with Traore and Bailey, you saw Traore was really poor first half, to be honest, kept giving it away. It was the right thing to replace him. I thought Bailey, actually, he showed his talent in some moments. He had some really good moments, I thought, but he also showed that inconsistency. You know, there was a good opportunity with a free kick that he hit straight into 2 players in a wall. And then right at the end, you know, with Villa are pressing and pushing, and Villa have a corner, it breaks away, and Bailey's the player there. He's got an easy pass to Martinez. And in my head, I was thinking, I bet he underhits this. I don't know why I thought that. I just did. And then he did. And I was like, that's where the lack of consistency is with these. Some of these, basically, Traore and Bailey are quite similar in that sense. And then because he underhit the pass, Martinez got to it, but I think it ultimately ended up being a foul, or the ball went out and Wolves got possession back. And it meant that they then could take the ball down to the corner for the next 3 bloody minutes. And we couldn't get it back from them. And by the way, talking of 3 minutes, 3 minutes injury time is a shambles, by the way. It should have been about 6 or 7. But aside from that, yeah, so just sort of squad depth-wise, maybe we're slightly seeing it now. And this summer, you know, I think it's quite obvious where some of the positions will be that they're going to target. But, you know, one player who did come on today, George, was Diego Carlos.
Yes. Yeah. God, fantastic. Fantastic to see him play, because, you know, a ruptured Achilles is a horrible injury.
Yeah.
And for that to happen so early on in his Villa career. And, you know, as well, it must be difficult for him because Gerrard was the one that brought him in. He played a couple of games, was injured, had to see the decline under Gerrard and then his eventual dismissal. Unai Emery comes in and you know, has developed this kind of winning formula with the team that he's put out there, and it's the same 11 pretty much every single week. So he hasn't really had a chance, even when he's come back into training and back into the squad, to stake a claim, because, you know, Konsa and Mings have been undroppable really for the past 2-3 months. But yeah, what an incredible end to the season for him. I really hope he's involved now, and I'm sure he will be in the final few games, and he gets right up to full fitness ahead of next season, because Emery will have an interesting decision to make, you know, whether he changes formation to accommodate him, or whether Mings or Konsa drop out of the starting 11 occasionally, whether he makes more of appearances in cup competitions, whether that does be in Europe or the FA Cup or League Cup or whatever. It's interesting to see how he fits in, because obviously he's not an Emery signing. But what does Emery truly think of him? I thought
his distribution, there was a couple of moments he sent quite long balls, very direct and very accurate across the field, and I thought his distribution looked good, even just in the short sort of cameo he had, I guess. And that's different to Konsa. Konsa's distribution is not, I would say, his strong point.
Yeah,
I think it's fine. I've always really hated Konsa. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see if Unai Emery takes to Carlos's distribution. If it is very good, we'll see, I guess.
I mean, I would say I really rate Concert. He's had a
Same.
difficult. He's when we brought him in, he adapted himself really well. I mean, remember when we signed him, he wasn't in the first team. It was Bjorn Engels was with Mings for like the
Yeah,
first couple of games of that season.
yeah,
Engels sort of fell out of form and favour. Concert was brought in and sort of really established himself as a really top player straight away. And we were singing his praises, and he was linked with the
yeah.
likes of Liverpool and all the rest of it. And then for the past sort of season and a half, his form sort of dipped along with us, really. And no one was really talking about him anymore as being a top class defender. This season, he's come back and done really well. But there is a part of me that thinks like he's almost playing it as limit. Like he's a very, very good Premier League defender. But you know what? You know, is there more to come from Conser? Like, would you class him as a top 6, top 7 defender, or is he more kind of mid table? And I with Carlos,
I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, I mean Carlos arrived with a big reputation. Newcastle really wanted him before they bought Botman. Botman was their number 2 choice originally. They wanted Diego Carlos, and for whatever reason that transfer didn't happen, and we signed him. And I remember there were a few Villa fans being very smug about calling Sven Botman, Newcastle reject, basically, because he wasn't the number 1 choice. But he's gone on and done incredible things for them. So who knows? Maybe Carlos can do it for us. I mean, it because a ruptured Achilles is such a serious injury. Obviously, you do wonder about how that's going to impact him going forward. I mean, we saw with Wesley with his knee, he's never really come back and been the same player. So that's something to obviously keep an eye on. But if he can fulfill his potential, then I think we really could have a proper centre half on our hands, and maybe we don't need to go in the transfer market and fix that area because we have him ready made to come in.
I think the positive is that you got 3 centre backs to pick from between Diego, Carlos, Conser, and Mings, who are all
you need to have that
very good. Yeah,
competition, don't you?
So yeah, for sure. I just think squad wise, it's like if you look in attack, you know, a lot of games in a row with Ramsey, Buendia, Watkins, you know, Traore and Bailey sort of flitter in and out a bit. You just wonder if like some of them, if we had a bigger squad, might have been switched around. Probably not obviously not Watkins, I would say, but maybe some of the others would have been a bit more in and out. And it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you fresh, you know, having competition for places. And I think ultimately that's what Villa will aim to rectify in the summer. George and I have known each other a long time, but our friendship could be in crisis soon in this, the spicy question. And today, George, I ask you, can Mateu Alemany, I believe it's pronounced, add much to Villa? Or do you think that directors of football are somewhat overhyped?
No, I don't think so. I think generally speaking, directors, not to touch on Alemany directly at the moment, but directors of football are quite important, I think, to the structure of modern football clubs. I think the days of managers having, you know, complete control of transfers and all the rest of it is probably not the way to go. I think it does need to be more of kind of a brain trust, because managers can't do everything. You know, managers have enough of a job picking a squad to play football matches and to prepare games and all the rest of it. I mean, you know, that's why within football teams you have so many backroom staff now. You have fitness coaches, you have goalkeeper coaches, defense coaches, all the rest of it, because there's so much to do, so much to plan, so much to prepare, and all that filters down to, you know, what the manager has to do in terms of picking personnel. So when it comes to sort of reading scout reports on players, perhaps, or flying over to see players yourself, or making a decision on who should come in and which position, it's probably too much for one manager to do. So sporting directors come in and they can facilitate that, and a lot of them now are very experienced in their roles. You know, it's probably a relatively new position in football, probably emerging the last 20 years or so. But now it's become very prominent, and there are a lot of skilled operators out there. Mateu Alemany, by reputation at least, being one. I got to be honest, I didn't know too much about him. It was a name I'd heard of mentioned when Barcelona were talked about when I was watching, Champions League games. Obviously, he's been at Barcelona at a really difficult time for them as a sort of restructure and consolidate with what money they have. And he has been, by all accounts, a really sort of smooth operator there. He's managed to bring in a lot of sort of free signings. I say, free players coming in out of contract, obviously on probably quite big wages, but people that have gone in and affected the team well, particularly in the league. Domestically, they're about to win the title for the first time in, is it 3 or 4 years? I think they're win the league.
4 years, yeah.
So and they've done that very smartly in the transfer window. The likes of Koundé, Lewandowski, players like that coming in and being really effective. And then before then, he was getting praised for his work at Valencia, and then before then, his hometown club of Mallorca. He sort of sanctioned the signing of Samuel Eto'o, who's one of the most iconic strikers in La Liga history, really. So he has serious pedigree, and he obviously knows Unai Emery, and hopefully, obviously, there's been no official confirmation of his joining, but Emery was asked about it in the press conference ahead of the Wolves game, and said there's potential there. Obviously, he was keeping his cards close to his chest, but it does seem like it's about to happen. And I just think, as I said, it's that brains trust element. I don't think Emery feels threatened by it. I'm sure he wants Alemany there to work with, bounce ideas off. And I think, from a Villa perspective, it will be interesting this summer to see exactly who we target, because there's lots of financial problems in La Liga at a lot of clubs. And I know this sounds perhaps a bit, I don't know, like we're sort of vulture carcass. But I think there are bargains to be had. I mean, if Moreno is an example of the deals that can be made in Spain, £30 million in today's market is absolutely nothing. And he's a very decent left back who's absolutely improved us. So that's one signing off the back that Emery's got right already. So if he can carry on doing that with Alemany's experience, then I think it can only be a good thing. So generally speaking, I don't think sporting directors are overrated. And in the specific case of Alemany, I think it's a real coup by the sounds of things. And I'm really excited to see what they can come up with in the summer.
Well, George, I put our names forward to Aston Villa for the role. They listened to the pre-season predictions and heard me say that I think Brentford might go this year. So they said, we'll get back to you. And they never got back to me. So disappointed, Mr. Thurslow.
Yeah.
Disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll have I won the Champions League with Rushton and Diamonds on Championship Manager 20 years ago. Football Manager nowadays.
Was that the one with Daniel Nardiello up front?
Oh, no, that was when I got sacked with Northampton Town. My incredible 6-game losing streak, which involved losses that were 6-0, 5-0, 6-1, 7-0.
You sound like Javi Gracia.
Yeah. Basically, it'd be like me taking over the Leeds now. And I tell you what I do at the press conference, George. I'd be saying, like, Klopp and Pep Guardiola, they don't know football better than me. Just like Sam Allardyce did.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't know football better. I've done 100 podcasts now. 100 podcasts. talk rubbish on all of them. But yeah, what does Guardiola know? I think Mateu Alemany. I mean, I spoke to Samuel Marsden from ESPN Diario Sports, Siempre Positivo, the Barcelona podcast, all about him really. And he said it was a big coup for Aston Villa. He thought of very positively at Barcelona. And his work at Valencia as well. So in a sense, Valencia, a bit of a basket case under Peter Lim. Barcelona themselves, financially, a bit of a basket case in recent years. And you'd have to say that what he did, at both clubs, helped Valencia get to top four 2 seasons in a row, despite being a bit of a joke. Yeah. And now they're in relegation trouble. And I think Valencia fans were very unhappy when he was let go from Valencia. Barcelona, same thing. He had to do a lot of creative transfers last season. And yeah, they're on course to win La Liga. I think the Lewandowski signing might come back to haunt them one day, but That's just my thinking because it's a long contract for a 35-year-old. And then, you know, he was also at Real Mallorca for a long time, and you know, did great work there as well. You know, always in La Liga, I think, when he was there, and that's not a team that's always been in La Liga. So, yes, I think that what happens is behind the scenes. I think sometimes, yes, there can be a bit of a celebritification, celebritification. Come up with a new word, George. It's going to be a new hit.
We're an innovative podcast.
Yes.
On all counts.
Stream of celebritification. Yes, there can be a bit celebby, sort of those directors of football, and some of them come in with big reputations and then don't do good jobs. I think Damien Comolli was one that I can think of who was supposed to be so good and then, you know, hasn't done a brilliant job, I would say, in the UK. But then you see
who's that Dutch guy at Chelsea?
Oh yeah. I can see his face.
I can see his. Yeah.
Frank Arneson.
Frank Arneson. Yeah.
Frank Arneson. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Arneson and you know, Gazidis, I think, who was at Arsenal and then went to AC Milan, and David Gill, who was at United and left when Fergie did. So, you know, it was a big, you know, it wasn't just Fergie leaving United that was a big problem. It was also David Gill and his expertise leaving. And Ed Woodward coming in was not as good on the football side as Gill was. So ultimately, these characters do count, you know. And, you know, he comes in with a successful track record, Alemany. It is a big coup by all accounts. So
I mean, the fact that we are able to entice someone over from Barcelona is I mean, it's incredible, really. I mean, it's not like Coutinho, who Barcelona were kind of desperate to get rid of.
Yeah,
you know, he's someone there, albeit not on the playing side of things, but someone a staff member who they genuinely wanted to keep and were unable to because we offered a better financial package than Barcelona, which in my head sounds completely mental. But
sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Very much a sign of the times. Yeah, I think it says more about Barcelona than it does about us personally, but still, it is impressive.
Well, I think the way to look at it is, I think it suggests there's an ownership that very much is ambitious, that really is backing Emery as much as it can.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, what does matter is it's not just, you know, ultimately there's a lot of things that go into making a football club successful. Having the right coach, I think, is probably the most important I can think of. Yeah. Having the right ownership as well. We have two very ambitious owners. We have the right coach, I believe. And then to have somebody in a sort of more behind the scenes role who can help Emery, communication, can get deals over the line that perhaps Emery can then focus more on the coaching at times. And also, you know, it probably helps that they both speak Spanish together. Again, that helps on the whole communication front as well. I don't know, just as long as it creates sets the ingredients behind the scenes for Emery to be as successful as he possibly can be on the pitch.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. And so, yes.
And I wonder as well, you know, with Barcelona being as huge as they are, I wonder, obviously I don't know, but I wonder whether Alemany in certain quarters is prevented from doing all the things he wants to do because there's, you know, voices coming from all directions at Barcelona. It's such a big club, a huge club to run, to manage, probably lots of people behind the scenes. At Villa, I don't think it will be the case. He will get much more of a say, much more control. And he'll have much more influence in terms of what he wants to do, which I imagine is perhaps another reason why he is on the cusp of joining us, because he can mold this club much more than he ever could really do at Barcelona, which I imagine is quite an appealing thing for him, and also just the new challenge of working in the Premier League, arguably the strongest league in the world. He's been in Spain all his
career, yeah.
So, you know, it's a challenge to be at a big club, a club which has ambition, a club that wants to play in the Champions League. Emery himself said very recently that's the long-term target for him. Playing in Europe, in the Europa League, if we do manage, is great, but he says he wants to, you know, play at the top, at the highest level. And Alemany has been sporting director at a club that has up until recently done that consistently every single season. So he knows what it takes.
I'm intrigued to see what it means with Johan Lang.
Yeah, and how that relationship works.
I'm intrigued to see what goes on there.
Well, I'm just purely speculating on kind of what I've read about the situation. I think from what I've read, again, according to some reports, I think Lange is appreciated for like his work with sort of data stuff. You know, that he has skills that perhaps Alemany doesn't have. So I think from what I've been reading, there's still a place for Lang and the qualities that he offers, but Alemany will perhaps take some of the other responsibilities from Lange, and maybe they can kind of work together for mutual benefit of the club.
We'll see. We'll see. I think jury's going to be out on that one. I mean, it's difficult to assess Lang really in the signings we've made. I mean, there's been a couple of like Boubacar Kamara was a fantastic signing. Diego Carlos potentially could have been. It's difficult to say at the moment. I'd argue Coutinho wasn't. Buendia, Danny Ings. I think Buendia's good, but Ings, no, that was a wrong signing.
Yeah, he's blown hot and cold, and they, it's.
But it's difficult to know exactly how involved he was with all of those transfers. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. I'm. What I will say is that I believe this is a real show of intent from Villa's owners, and it is an attempt to give Emery as much comfort in his role as he can get, working with people behind the scenes who might actually be able to bring players that might not have been necessarily easy to get into Villa. Maybe we'll have more of a chance with Alemany there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what it does do is, I mean, we all knew, again, this hasn't officially happened, so we have to make that point clear. But if it does happen, I think what was already going to be quite an exciting summer makes it that much more intriguing to see exactly who we're targeting, because already reports of Vlahovic from Juventus, Ferran Torres. I mean, players that, 6 months ago, we couldn't have dreamed of signing, but now they're being genuinely discussed in reputable newspapers. So, if that happens, astonishing. But yeah, as I said, whatever happens, it's going to be a really, really interesting summer, and I can't wait for it now.